Recently, there was a public holiday in Melbourne and I found myself with some free time right in the middle of the city. So I set myself on a mission. I wanted to visit my LGS and try to find some in-universe Magic the Gathering cards. Something with unique mechanics, something I've never seen before, and something that I could take home and research after I found it in the bulk bins. I wasn't really looking for anything for any of my decks, but I really just wanted to find things that maybe haven't had that much love in the last 10, 20 years. I wanted to look for things from old sets, I wanted to look for cool old foils, and I didn't want to spend that much money as they weren't going in decks in the first place. Luckily, my LGS has started putting out their bulk bins again, and there's a whole giant tray of $1 cards, and I had to go through them. So let me show you what I got. The first card was called Soul Charmer, and I picked this one up because it looked so good in foil. There's just something about these old foils that just look so cool and just so much better than the new ones. This card came out in Prophecy, which was released back in 2000, and this was actually the first set that ever printed Rhystic Study. Obviously, mechanically, this card is pretty shit by today's standards, but I'll read what it does. When Soul Charmer deals combo damage to a creature, you gain 2 life unless that creature's controller pays 2. Now, what I find cool about this is that this card came out 6 years before Lifelink was even introduced to Magic, which is why this card just doesn't say Lifelink in the first place, but I thought that was pretty interesting. I also found it interesting that this card's effect only worked if you dealt damage to a creature rather than the creature's controller, which is just cool. Finally, it was really funny. I searched up this card on EDHREC to see if anyone has played this card before, and it's in 148 decks out of 3.35 million. Finally, I found this Bowler Warrior. Bowler Warrior is a 1/1 Spell Shaper, which is a really cool name for a creature type. And according to Scryfall, there are 57 cards that include the type Spell Shaper, with the most recent one being printed on the backside of a March of the Machine battle, which was released back in 2023, which I just think is really interesting. Next, we have a card called Tivid's Crusade, and this was released back in 1994 in a set called The Dark. The Dark is a really fucking cool set, which features cards like Blood Moon, Ball Lightning, and Owls of Deep Shadow. It also had Felwar Stone, which for some reason really passed me out, as I always felt like Felwar Stone was a more recent card, given its usefulness in like commander decks. Now, Tivid's Crusade says one simple line of text: all goblins are destroyed, which I thought was hilarious, and I dream of the day I can one day play this in a commander game against a goblin type or deck. Moving on, we found a card called Parallax Inhibitor, which is a 2-mana artifact that says, pay 1, tap, sacrifice Parallax Inhibitor, put a fade counter on each permanent with fading you control. Now, what the fuck is fading, you might ask? Well, fading is a super old and niche keyword which came out in Nemesis back in 2000, which says, this creature comes into play with X fade counters. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may remove a fade counter. If you can't, sacrifice it. Now, most of the permanents with this keyword allow you to remove fade counters on them at instant speed to give you extra effects such as Jolting Merfolk, which comes in with 4 counters and then allows you to remove them to tap a target creature. Before finding this card, I literally had no idea that this keyword even existed, so it's pretty cool, and I'm glad I picked this one up for just $1. When I found this next card, I almost had like a brain aneurysm trying to read it, and this is Spell Shifter, a 6-mana artifact creature which says the following: Spell Shifter has power and toughness that add up to 7, but neither may be more than 7. Set them when Spell Shifter comes into play, and you may change them during your upkeep. Now, its Scryfall text is a little easier to understand, but what a wacky, goofy card. Basically, you can set its power to any number between 0 and 7, and then its toughness is equal to 7 minus that number as well. So for example, set its power to 2, then it would be a 2/5 because 2 power, and then 7 minus 2 is 5. I can't believe I'm explaining basic math. Given this creature is an artifact and a shapeshifter, I thought maybe it would have a little more play on EDHREC because it definitely isn't played in any other formats, and it doesn't. I did find it funny though that it was in 3 Leonardo da Vinci decks, which I guarantee you the designer of this card could not foresee when they made it. Finally, I did pick up a few really cool lands. Now, I don't know if anyone saw that really fucking cool video from that PoE dev which shared his collection of misprint lands, but dude, I was like a deer in headlights watching that. I legit just couldn't take my eyes off the screen. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll link it in the description, but you definitely have to give it a watch if you like Magic the Gathering cards, and especially if you like misprints. Anyway, I picked up this Ebon Stronghold and Havenwood Battlegrounds, both of which allow you to sacrifice it to add 2 mana of its dedicated color. These were also both illustrated by Liz Danford, which I thought was pretty cool. Next is this Remote Farm, and probably my favorite card that I picked up from this collection, which comes into play tapped with 2 depletion counters. You can then tap it to remove a counter and add 2 white mana. Once the last one is removed, it gets sacrificed. I honestly think this card isn't that bad, and I could really see it being played in like mono white commander decks. But other than that, yeah, just really cool. Probably my favorite card out of the bunch. Next is Cabal Pit, which has the threshold mechanic, which cares all about having 7 or more cards in your graveyard. And I found this one interesting because it has this little Wizards of the Coast logo in the bottom left-hand corner, which is something you don't really see very often. Finally is this Ruins of Trollcare, which I found cool for a number of reasons. Firstly, it has the old tap symbols, which is really cool. And secondly, it was illustrated by Mark Poole, who is a legendary Magic the Gathering artist who's been working with Wizards for like 30 years now, which is insane. But yeah, those are the lands, and honestly, just some really cool stuff. Overall, this was a really fun little side quest today, and I don't think this one's going to be a very long video. If you do have any of these cards, or you've ever played them in decks before in the last 30 years, please let me know. Tell me what you use them for, tell me what decks they were in. I'd really like to know why they were printed in the first place. Before I go, I've got to remind you that I'm a Palms Off Gaming affiliate now. You can follow my link in the description for 10% off all their products. All their TCG stuff is really cool. And if you want to join my Discord, you can join the link down below. Other than that, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.